Our good friend Brandon Helwig, Rivals.com, covers UCF. And Brandon, this is, I mean, especially based on the video that they even put out with Mark Daniels, which we're going to play after your segment's over. This is Christmas morning, is it not?
Yeah, well, we're almost here. I guess it's more like Christmas Eve or kind of like New Year's Eve. I know everyone's kind of awaiting the midnight when it becomes official. I know all the incoming schools, various events planned. I know UCF is kind of having something for VIPs at the President's House tonight. Going to have sort of like a New Year's toast kind of thing at the stroke of midnight. So that's a question that I kind of have. Like, is this official at midnight Eastern time because UCF and Cincinnati are on the Eastern time zone, or does it become official Central time where the Big 12 has its headquarters? Regardless, there's going to be a lot of celebrating at midnight in Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great – probably should have figured that out before today. Everybody got on the same page as far as what time zone. But no, I think it's got to be probably East because now there's the more of the Eastern time zone that's taking place. But, Brandon, can you just kind of describe sort of the countdown? I mean, we've touched base and, you know, there's been the excitement ever since the invitation. But now that it's finally starting to get here, there's media days in a couple of weeks. Can you just sort of describe the atmosphere and just sort of the thought process right now with UCF fans heading into next season?
Yeah, it's just finally becoming more real. Obviously, everyone was excited when the invitation was issued in September of 2021, but it kind of seemed, far away because you still had to finish that season and had another kind of, lame duck year in the American. But the fact that, we're on the cusp of the inaugural Big 12 year, like I said, Media Days is coming up. The football schedule obviously came out a few months back, and, all the fans are kind of deciding, the road trips they want to go on and, booking airfares at hotels. It just seems real. When you pick up the, college football previews, the Phil Steeler, what have you, and, seeing UCF listed amongst the Big 12 teams, it's just becoming real and everyone's just so excited. I mean, this UCF program, I mean, they didn't even have a football program until 1979. And, there's probably Big 12 fans listening who were, going to football games long before then. And it's just been a slow, but in some ways a fast journey in some other respects as a Division III to 1AA to a Division 1A independent and, all the different stops along the way. UCF, it was a short period of time, but UCF at one time was a member of the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, as a football-only member in the early 2000s, and Conference USA to the American. So it's been quite a fun journey for UCF.
How, in your opinion, set up are they to make a significant run right off the bat? I mean, look, this is maybe the deepest team of the four coming in.
They're definitely being looked at, I would say, as like the one with probably the best chances to succeed early, Brandon, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at everything. I mean, it's so hard to predict when, UCF hasn't been competing against Big 12 teams, so you really don't have a frame of reference. And there's not going to be any off games. Maybe in the American or, there'd be a game where you show up and, even if you don't play your best, you're probably going to win. Well, that's not going to be the case in the Big 12. It's going to be 9 conference games. It's going to be some tough trips, and every place is going to be a fantastic environment. So it's not going to be easy. But I would agree with that because I'm obviously going to be more familiar with the Houstons and Cincinnati of the world, being that they're coming from the American with UCF, just based on the roster and everyone coming back. I would agree with that. I think UCF is of the 4 newcomers is best positioned to have the most immediate success. I think when you look at, what would be a realistic, inaugural season goal for UCF, I think obviously you would want to still reach a bowl game and hit that 6-win mark. But, I don't know. I think UCF has a chance to do much better than that. I mean, I think it's all going to depend on, the returning quarterback, Rhys Plumlee. I think a lot of people forget, even though he was an older player, last year was his first yearly full season as a starting quarterback. He had been at Ole Miss and kind of played a little bit as a freshman with some injuries and had moved to wide receiver. And a lot of people are optimistic and excited about the growth he's going to make, especially working with a new quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. If he makes a jump and he stays healthy, I think UCF has the talent to make some noise. I'm not predicting that they're going to win the Big 12, but I mean, you never know. I think there's a chance for them to potentially, maybe, 9 or 10 wins. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think UCF is in pretty good shape.
Do you think they have the depth to withstand injuries and still maintain a run if they get on one?
Yeah, that's that's obviously that you put it out. I was about to say that a second ago. Do they have the depth? I think that's where they've, been trying to, get some guys in the transfer portal this past offseason to kind of have that depth, especially on defense. The injury bug, hit UCF last year towards the end of the season. Obviously, like I said, quarterback, they really don't have anyone else besides Rhys Plumlee that has, considerable experience, and he's, as a running quarterback, he's always prone to have a sprained ankle or a hamstring, which is what he had last season. So you got to keep him healthy. But that's a great question. What does UCF have the depth? Well, they have the depth on the offensive and defensive lines. I mean, time will tell. But, as far as, looking, beyond 2023, with Gus Malzahn, UCF is recruiting at a very high level. We'll see what pans out here, but there's a lot of rumors of some big recruiting announcements that, could be coming within the next week to kind of, maybe kind of be, orchestrated with the players to kind of have it coincide with the entering the Big 12. That's the rumor anyway. So they had a lot of great players visit during the month of June, and a lot of people are excited that, they're going to have a really good recruiting class for this 2024 class when it's all said and done.
So, Brandon, I know we're going to play a video here, but just I guess there's going to be a learning process, learning not just about who the players are and the coaches to an extent, but just like the traditions and just the athletic departments, kind of how they operate. How would you describe UCF from like a social media standpoint, a marketing standpoint? How do you feel they do on that end, and how do you feel like that will play into what people see as far as the Big 12?
Yeah, I think the thing that people are going to recognize, if they haven't already, if you're a Big 12 fan, when you look at UCF, that it's a relatively young fan base. I think the average age of alumni might be something like 38 years old. And, with younger fan bases, maybe you're a little bit more, we're more in tune to social media. Maybe you're a little bit more brash in terms of, your opinions online. And,
sure.
And that's something I think some people have kind of recognized through the years when you look at UCF fans on Twitter. And, UCF, they kind of have a chip on their shoulder a little bit. I think that was sort of an attitude they had that was kind of cultivated through UCF's undefeated streak in 2017 and 2018. And obviously the former AD, Danny White, declaring UCF national champions, which ended up in the NCAA record book. I mean, it's in there that UCF was a national champion, but just stuff like that kind of like played into the mindset of the fan base. And, so I think that's one thing that Big 12 fans will definitely recognize about UCF.
The Baylor game's the first Big 12 home game. What do you expect the atmosphere around that to be like?
Yeah, it's going to be an unbelievable atmosphere. I mean, I'm crossing my fingers that it's a night game because, it's Florida and you really don't want to worry about day games. Maybe towards the end of the season, you definitely
We know, buddy. We know here in Texas.
You don't want to have it in Texas. I'm preaching to the choir. I'm hoping it's a night game because that will definitely, the atmosphere will just, whatever it's going to be, it'll just be kicked up a huge notch if it's at night. But it's just going to be an exciting time. I haven't heard anything official, but I think there might be a good possibility that UCF honors, because it'll be 10 years since the 2013 team that went on to play in the you know what I'm going.
Oh, yeah.
I played in the Fiesta Bowl and beat Baylor, and it would just be a natural to honor that team at that game. So that'll kind of add to the atmosphere and the intrigue, especially with Baylor being the first home game.
Brandon, were you there in Arizona?
Yeah. I was. That was just, that was just a surreal feeling. I was doing an interview with someone else earlier today with the Athletic. Chris Vanini was asking me sort of about the journey of UCF and kind of my perspective, kind of being in tune with the fan base. And it was really probably one of the very first moments that, you kind of got the sense that UCF, could potentially be on to bigger and better things. It was just, a great atmosphere. It was a tough trip, for UCF fans. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of UCF fans. It was much different a few years later when they went to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta and UCF had more fans than Auburn. But that was just a great moment, and just to kind of feel that you belonged on that stage and you could be just as competitive. Because you remember they were talking how Baylor was gonna, whatever the confidence points or whatever they were talking about on ESPN, about how Baylor was just pretty much gonna demolish UCF, and it was pretty much the other way around. And
we got. Craig and I, and Smokey's not here today, but we got a very interesting behind-the-scenes look of everything that was going on that week. But for Baylor, instead of that being a big week of triumph, it was absolute stress. We're having it like Smokey and I are on the air having to send Craig to a media availability to ask Coach Briles if he's leaving the school to go to Texas. And so what should have been a big week for them out, like their, out of state bowl game and all that stuff really started to kind of unwind.
There was that, but that was a distraction of some sort. But Brandon, make no mistake, they were overlooking UCF entirely. And I think after that game, that kind of woke everybody's eyes up to, all right, well, wait a second.
You want to talk about Big 12 fans. A lot of UCF fans did not have very good experiences with Baylor fans. It's not like it was anything, over the top national thing, but just the fact that Baylor fans, they thought in the week leading up to the game, they were interacting with them around the Phoenix area, how they were dismissive and they were kind of mocking UCF a little bit, like, oh, sorry you guys made this long trip only to get beat by 60 points, and just kind of snide comments that were made before the game. And so a lot of, we'll see. People have always asked about, obviously there's no geographic rivals for UCF. They do have a rivalry with Cincinnati, I'd say, being in the same conference, but it'll be interesting to see if there'll be some kind of mini rivalries we'll set up amongst teams. It'll be obviously be based on what happens on the field, but maybe, who knows, there could be a little bit of something with Baylor to develop.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think anything's on the table right now. I could definitely see that. And, just amazing to think about. The timing is so perfect for that to happen for the Baylor game, hosting them. I hadn't even thought about that at all, but that's just too perfect. All right, let you go here, but outside of like the Baylor, the 10-year, and that'll be a lot of fun. When you initially saw that schedule and you see, okay, Cincinnati, so there's an automatic rivalry game. Was it the OU road trip that popped out? Was it going to K-State? What initially jumped out as far as just something exciting off of the new schedule for you as a UCF fan?
Yeah, I think it was the first one you mentioned. It was the road game at Oklahoma. I think UCF fans were a little disappointed they didn't get the opportunity to host Oklahoma or Texas in the 1 year they're going to share the league with them. But I think it's the fact that UCF is playing Oklahoma, and that was a little bit of a controversial deal. UCF's former quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, transferred to Oklahoma. And there was kind of some controversy when he left, and of course anyone you know how the portal goes when a player leaves. So that'll be an interesting dynamic with Dylan Gabriel being the quarterback at Oklahoma, knowing that he started his career at UCF. And I know that's the one game I know that'll probably have the largest representation of UCF fans. I think there's a nonstop that flies from Orlando to Oklahoma City on Southwest. I know that's already sold out of UCF fans. I'm going to ahead and book that one solid. So that should be, I think that's kind of the game that a lot of fans have circled on their calendar to attend this year.
Brandon Helwig, Rivals.com, covers UCF. Brandon, thank you so much. I will be at that UCF game on September 30th. So
I will see you then.
All right. We'll work something out. All right. Talk to you soon. Brandon Helwig, Rivals.com. Certainly appreciate it. All right. Before we take a break to